Have you ever felt like no matter how much you achieve, it's never quite enough? That you have to grab every opportunity before it disappears because the getting is good. We often think of scarcity as a lack of physical things, but it's actually a deeply encoded survival mechanism that can trap us in a loop of fear and competition.
Well, I mean, I think this goes back to the whole conversation that you and I have had about this concept of work. Work is something we humans created.
It is so something we created. Money is something we created. Thanks, Hamilton, for the American monetary system. This is what we were trained to do as children going through school, right?
Right.
Work hard, you will get good grades. I was taught growing up was that my success is based on my input. That really is shaped how then we start to behave in the world as adults.
Today, Chris and Jen explore how this perceived lack limits our happiness and why high achievers are most susceptible to it. We're diving deep into how your mental bandwidth is like a phone battery and how shifting to an abundance mindset can actually generate more for everyone. It's time to stop being your own biggest obstacle. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Chris and Jen in the Morning,
where self-care meets real life.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Jen.
And welcome back to another exciting episode with us.
We're super excited to have everyone here. And today I am super excited to talk about the scarcity mindset. I know, Chris, you and I have been talking about this for a while. Yeah. But before we do that, let's talk about the community that we're building. We are so glad to have all of you as a part of that community. We're glad that you're here joining the conversation. Chris and I started this podcast because we would have these conversations with each other, with ourselves. And we thought, you know what, this is helpful stuff that is helping us live better, happier lives. And maybe we should start widening that conversation to include more people. So we would absolutely love for you to join the community. We love to crowdsource all of our best ideas for happiness and living a better life. So we would love for you to share with us your tips and tricks and thoughts. We'd also love your reactions to what we're talking about. So please follow, subscribe, join in, become a part of our community. Go to our website, www.chrisandjenitm.com, and sign up for the newsletter that we'll be producing starting this year. We would absolutely love to have you.
Come join our fun and helpful community.
Yes. So before we talk about scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset, why don't we talk about gratitude? We know that gratitude is a good place to start any day.
That's right.
So we've made a practice of starting our show with gratitude.
Yep.
And Chris, I'll tell you, one of the things that I've really been thinking a lot about that I tend to take for granted, but this week I've been really intentionally thinking about how grateful I am is just how much information we have at our fingertips. We were having a conversation a couple weeks ago about how it is so easy to find information. There's all of this stuff that you used to have to go look up in an encyclopedia or just kind of guess correctly. And now there's all of this information at our fingertips. And you do have to be careful about, your sources, right? But you no longer have to know the Dewey Decimal System and have access for somebody to take you to a library and then, oh my gosh, read through a million books to find the answer to a question.
Okay, well, the whole reading thing really hasn't gone away because, if you Google something, you still get served lots of options.
Well, but I mean, I will say, even the information that you do get served, the distillation of it is just so much more readily available.
Agreed. And then back in the day, if your family didn't own the full set of encyclopedias, then if what you needed was in one that you didn't have, then you had to wait till you went to the library or to school.
Well, and that was really your only source. So you just assumed that was who was deciding the facts. I mean, I don't know. I've never really thought about that. Maybe that's a good question for us to ask Ace
Yeah.
in a future segment.
Yeah, I love that. And also what a small thing that also has made such a large impact on our lives. That's not that we, rank gratitude moments, but that's such a good gratitude moment.
Yeah, right. Well, yes, all gratitude moments are good gratitude moments because you're thinking about what you're grateful for. But yeah, I just thought I really take this for granted and I should just pause for a moment and be really like appreciative because this is not something that I used to have
Yeah.
access to. But my curiosity, my insatiable curiosity is so much more easily satisfied. And then that just makes me curious about many other things.
It just leads you down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
One thing leads to the next. I totally get it. My
What about
gratitude
you?
moment this week, I saw several acts of kindness throughout the week.
I love that.
The past 2 weeks, I've been going into the office every day, so it's been I'm out in the world with people, and it's just nice to see people helping carry heavy bags, heavy things up the 2 flights of stairs to get to the subway, people offering
Yeah.
their seat, just small acts of kindness that really go a long ways, people opening and holding doors for each other. I just found myself seeing those things and being inspired, or I don't know, it just felt nice with all the things going on around us, to see those little acts of kindness. Were just like a soft landing this week, and I really appreciated it.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, let's talk about scarcity mindset. You and I, like you said,
Yeah.
we've talked about this before. I think one of the first times that I remember us talking about it, we were walking somewhere in the city. We were doing an affirmation together, and it talked about scarcity. And I remember after the affirmation, I was like, "What?" I said it, but I don't really know what that means. What does it mean? And so we kind of went on this. You educated me kind of on what scarcity mindset was and how it came to be in your life. So do you mind introducing it here and kind of
Yeah.
sharing your journey to scarcity mindset?
Yeah. So, as I've been doing some, just reflection myself through the last several years, one of the things that I started to become aware of is that I felt like there was never enough and I always needed more in order to create this sense of stability, this mindset that there wasn't enough to go around,
Okay.
and so you had to take what you could get while the getting was good. And it's interesting because it's kind of in conflict with some of my other values, and so you kind of catch yourself having thoughts in line with that, and then also going, oh, but I really do believe lifting others up is important and a rising tide lifts all boats and all these things. And so
Yeah.
it's those moments when you have thoughts that sort of conflict with each other. And I've told you in the past, I feel like a dichotomy.
Yeah.
Frequently, because you have these moments where things cross through your head that just feel like things that are on repeat that you've heard before or baked in, to your upbringing or whatever. And then you really kind of hear them and start to question, well, wait a second, w- do I believe that?
Yeah.
And so as I sort of leaned into that, what I realized in doing some research is, oh, this is about this fear that I don't have enough to support myself, and so like I need to go find enough. And that shows up not just in physical things and money and the things that take care of your physical stability, but also if you think about emotional support and
Yeah.
stability, there's not enough to go around, and so you take what you can. And um if you think about characters in shows that like have this reputation of being stingy, and you kind of apply this scarcity mindset, it's they feel like there's not enough to go around, and so they need to get what they have. And so what I started to, or what they can. And so I started to realize like this is a like an evolutionary mechanism, but when it's like being used in the wrong places,
Yeah.
when there really is enough to go around, then like it doesn't really serve well. So I started thinking about what's the other side of scarcity, and it's abundance, right? And so this abundance thinking is instead realizing like there will always be more. There is enough to go around. We aren't dealing with just limited resources, and sometimes you are, but oftentimes you're not. And so I think it's really good to ask the question of if we can generate more, if we can find more, um, or if truly like there is a scarcity, and how are you showing up?
Yeah.
And I think the question that you have to ask yourself is what serves you better. So, what I found for me is that this scarcity mindset was not serving me well. I wasn't showing up in a way that was true to my core values, and I was feeling really conflicted. And and so, how do I recognize that? How do I like name it to tame it, like
Yeah.
you talk about? And then how do I start coaching myself to think differently about it so I show up in a way that I feel more comfortable with and that like brings more happiness to me and the people around me.
Yeah. And I think something that you said that's really important, and we've talked about this a lot, like with our, as we have evolved as a human species, there have been certain things that are just kind of like encoded into us around safety, security, that once served us really well, and now, as we have evolved and the world and our surroundings have evolved, they don't serve us so well anymore. And so this idea of scarcity mindset actually used to be really helpful because it allowed people to know, like, oh, when do we need to move to a place where we can continue to survive and have food and water and all of those things that we needed? But now that that's not really too much of a
It's a lot easier for us
right.
to get resources, have access to resources. We're not just stuck to a limited area.
Exactly. But our brain has continued to see this now in the other ways that you talked about, the emotional side of it, the success, like if you're building a career, with family, like all of those things, it shows up in those places, and sometimes not in a way that actually is helpful or serving us in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know for me, like, I enjoy a good, like, way to understand things a little less out of the theoretical and into the how does this show, like, how could this show up in real life? And I think a good way that I see this is like think of your mental bandwidth like a phone battery. And when we're relaxed, and resourced, your battery's at like 90%. So you can think really clearly. You can open all of the apps that you need. You have the ability to plan ahead. You have all of those things. But when our brains start to perceive this idea of scarcity, it's like our phone dropping to 5%. And once our phones drop to a certain percentage, they really only focus on one thing. And
Yeah. Or if somebody comes up and they're like, "Hey, can I use your phone to call somebody real quick?" and you're like, "Oh, I only have 5%." Like
right.
there's not enough to go around.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really good analogy because we can all relate to our phone being almost dead and needing to feel like we need to preserve resources, versus feeling like I have plenty and I have enough to share. And I think that's the thing, is that oftentimes we get tricked into thinking that there is not abundance, or things aren't plentiful, when really we're very resourceful. And most of the things that we're going after can actually be generated anew. Um, and so we miss the opportunity to think about how sharing actually like creates more abundance.
Right.
Like leaning into abundance generates more abundance, because the oftentimes the what you can produce on your own is not like, it's multiples of factors when you join your efforts with somebody else. It's that synergy that you can get.
There's a compounding effect.
Yeah.
In most cases, whenever more hands make easier work and you can produce more, you can do more. But I think like that's what the importance around this like definition of scarcity mindset is, the idea that it's perceived. Like there may be instances where it is real, but really like the underlying bold thing here is it's a perceived lack of something.
Like, and I think the thing about scarcity is the scarcity mindset is that it's not actually based in facts. So you can have enough, but it will never feel like enough. So if you are, how do you recognize if you're in a place of scarcity mindset? If the things that are coming into your like line of thinking are like I should be celebrating something, but I can't celebrate it. I have to move on to the next. I have to get the next win. I have to get the next big accomplishment or achievement.
So that could be like promotion, or I hit a goal, or I finished school, and it like you can't be in that moment to celebrate it. You're now all of a sudden moved on to that next thing.
Yeah, it's not just this feeling of like some people I think feel like this scarcity mindset is you're hoarding things for yourself from everybody else. But really, I think oftentimes you end up like it's not like you're hoarding them for yourself. You're limiting yourself. Like you feel like you're not enough. It's you can't celebrate the wins because it wasn't enough, and it's not lasting, and it's always on to the next one, and you better get it before it runs out. And it's like this, it's not just this outward in thinking, it's also this inward out thinking of scarcity. And I think that is the part that people don't always understand, especially outside looking in. When you look at somebody that you would describe as being stingy, you think about them being selfish, and sometimes maybe that is the case. But I think if it's coming from this like scarcity mindset, it's not about being selfish. It's about being, afraid.
Right. Well, and I think that's where part of this seek to understand people is really important. Like I know whenever you and I were first talking about this, it was, I guess I hadn't really comprehended it or felt like I saw it in my life until then you bring it up, and I do start to see like how either I am perceiving things or in conversations with others, like I'm starting to see like how this can manifest in different spaces. And so I think like that awareness of it, and then I loved how you said it's not just inward but it's outward as well, because sometimes like when someone gets promoted, we struggle with celebrating them because we're like, oh, I wanted that job, or I'm trying and now I don't get it. Like,
right. Yeah. Because it feels like there's not enough opportunity to go around.
Right. Which in some cases, again, there may be some truth to it.
But opportunity can be created. It just depends on what box you're putting yourself in.
Exactly.
So that's one of the things that when you find yourself getting caught in this scarcity mindset thinking, this feeling of scarcity, there's not enough and they've got it, then I think a good thing to do, one, you name it to tame it. You got to recognize that that's where you're at.
Yeah.
But then you start asking yourself, okay, well, what box have I put myself in that is limiting this? Because oftentimes I do think that we are the only thing, like one of my big beliefs and mantras to myself has always been, I'm the only thing that stands in my way. And that's not... I think some people could hear that and think that that's ego. It doesn't come from a place of ego. It comes from a place of like, if I can't understand it correctly, if I can't think about it differently, if I can't believe, that it's possible, then I can't make it happen.
Yeah.
And so like I'm my own biggest obstacle. Like we all are our own biggest obstacle. Because there's a solution to every problem. It's just whether or not we can find the path to the solution, right?
Well, and it's having the grit to do so, because sometimes it's not always the easiest path to take.
Well, I think oftentimes it's that I get caught up in the wrong problems and I'm trying to solve the wrong things. And then I realize, well, that really didn't bring me any happiness, like I thought it was going to, but it didn't. And so it's that willingness to kind of really continue to be reflective with yourself, but you would get over reflective, and then get stuck. So I think all things in balance. One of the ways that I don't think we typically think about scarcity, but that we all could probably relate to, when people like it can show up in attention. Those people that like show up and they're trying to soak up all of the attention in the room, right? Like sometimes it's like a scarcity because they feel unseen. They feel like there isn't enough attention. And so when they have their opportunity to take it in, like they show up and soak it all up. I mean, sometimes it's, for other reasons, but like it's not just money and physical things. It also can be about like love and attention and anything that you feel like you're hoarding for yourself versus
Or that you need to hoard.
Yeah, or that you need to hoard. Yeah. I think that takes being really honest with yourself because it doesn't feel nice to feel like you're hoarding. And so I think sometimes there's like this pushback internally of going, well, I'm not hoarding.
Yeah.
Like, but when you think I need to get what's mine, it's unfair. Somebody else has more than their fair share. Like, and these are things that like, I mean, I don't know about you, but they're things that were like really common language growing up for me. Like get while the getting is good, and the early bird gets the worm, and
So you're going wormless.
there's not enough to go around. And when you think about it, like I think about my grandma living through the Great Depression, and like things really were scarce from a food standpoint, etc. And so like we shift into this thinking of I need to protect. Like I need there to be enough. But it's when that mindset isn't actually serving you that I think it's good to recognize and shift into a different way of thinking. So
I do. So when we think about this, though, right? Like it's not. I think you came to lean into this in adulthood, if you will.
Absolutely.
Like, I guess, like, where does this like show up, like in like for people? Is it like something like we've talked about how it's like kind of ingrained in us, but then there's like, I don't know, like are some people more susceptible to like having more like struggling maybe or being in this space?
Yeah, actually, so research says that high achievers, people who grew up with instability, and people who learned their worth through productivity are really susceptible to the scarcity mindset. Because the brain just got really used to operating in this mode of there's not enough to go around. And, I think it's not always that way, but research says, oh, there's some commonality here in people that really are grappling with this view of the world through the scarcity lens versus understanding how they could view the world from an abundance lens.
Yeah. I mean, as we've talked about it, and as like I've spent more time thinking about this since you and I originally had this conversation, I don't think I've struggled so much with the tangible things. Like when I see this showing up in my life, I see it around like my time. I see it around like wanting to grow in my career, grow in my influence within my community. Like it's been an interesting journey to go on, because it's like sometimes whenever something's tangible, it seems more manageable versus like really having to like kind of sift through and kind of go through like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I thinking this way? Like all of those things. It's like you really got to sit with yourself and think about it more.
Well, what's so interesting is I feel like for me, what I know to be true is that even when I feel like time is limited and finite, and I know that that's true, we spend our time on all kinds of things that aren't, you can't just be super efficient with your time all the time, right? and we're not. And so we say, oh, there's not enough time. But then, like, when we really like think about it, you make time for what's important to you. And if you're not making time for it, I guess it doesn't mean that it's not important to you, but like what's holding you back from being
Yeah.
able to do that? And it could be like a scarcity mindset of feeling like you don't have enough time, but do you really? And so if you were to switch to an abundance mindset, and I catch myself in this often, what what if I were to go down the path of I do have enough time for this and I were to fit it in. Now, I don't think that means you just overschedule yourself. It's
Right.
like a trade off, right? But like, I mean, I spent an hour playing a game on my phone. What if I spent 15 minutes, giving myself that time and then use that time for something else? But I think it's all in what are you getting out of that
Yeah.
time? I think for me, when I think about like meeting Ace and us being in our relationship in the beginning, he would do things like uh, pick up somebody else's check when we were out to eat, and we were just broke college students, right? And I would think, why would you do that? Like, there's not enough money to go around. Like, why would you do that? And yet, clearly, there's enough money. We're out to eat. It's not like we're, in a place where
Yeah.
we are, so locked down that we have to be, so efficient with our funds.
Right.
And I think about that example, and I think like, oh, I was completely in this place of scarcity thinking, like, why would you ever share when you don't have enough? You have to get enough in order to share. Versus that abundance thinking of, it's okay. Like, I'll get more. We've got enough. We have enough for us right now. And we have enough to share.
Yeah.
Which is like really interesting. So let's talk about abundance thinking without like being all woo-woo, like magical thinking. But what really is abundance thinking? And how would you describe abundance thinking, Chris?
I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about. It's like really assessing if a resource or the thing that you are like in this scarcity mindset about, is it real? Is that the real story?
Yeah.
And if not, like challenging yourself in like how you can maybe flip the story in a way that's more productive and serving, and maybe make it to where you feel like it can be achieved versus like needing to scoop it all up and have it all before you can move out of that space.
I think it can be kind of uncomfortable, at least for me, when you first start to push yourself to think this way. It can be really uncomfortable because you're like, wait a second, but why? Whoa. What if I don't have enough? What if I
Right.
don't have enough? And then you have to go, okay, wait, what, like, why am I thinking that way? Why am I afraid of that? Where is that
Yeah.
coming from? And is that fair or not fair? Like, am I serving myself here or not? I think this idea of we can always generate more. I think one of the things that I've had to really focus on is like, well, why don't I naturally come into that? Why am I afraid, like, I'm not going to have enough, instead of thinking, oh, well, like I generated what I have. I can always generate more. I can always find more. I don't know. What do you think about that?
You say that, and my immediate response is, yeah, but I'm going to have to work hard again. I'm going to have to, like, there's, like you said, there's trade-offs, right? Like, it's going to be, and like, this may be where like the selfishness like kicks in. Like, I don't want to have to do it again. I don't want to have to, like, gosh, even just saying that makes me feel uncomfortable.
Oh, I mean, it is uncomfortable to really get in there and think about it, right? But like, what I think, if we take ourselves out of the situation, what we can agree is that not everybody that has enough had to fight hard to get that.
That's true. That's very true.
So, like, is it that we had to fight hard, or is it that we fought hard because we believed that's what we had to do?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Like, is it a mindset thing? And not everybody that's fights hard has enough. Like, so is fighting hard for it really?
Right. Is that the measure of success? Like,
Is it really the what creates success or not? Right? Because sometimes you fight hard and it works out. Sometimes you fight hard and it doesn't. Sometimes you don't fight hard and it works out.
yeah.
So is it really correlated?
Well, I
I
mean, I
mean,
think this like goes back to the whole conversation that you and I have had about this like concept of work. Like,
yeah,
work is something we humans created.
it is so something we created. Money is something we created. Thanks, Hamilton. We're for the American monetary system. Work is something that we created. This concept of how we live our lives. And then this is what we were trained to do as children going through school, right?
Right.
Like, work hard and you will get good grades. Work hard. And like everything that I was taught growing up was that my success is based on my input. Um, and that's really interesting when you think about it. Like, that was a very American moment in time sort of perspective on an upbringing that really has shaped how then we start to behave in the world as adults, right?
Yeah. I mean, I really think that as you were just talking about that, my brain went to, I feel like we could do an entire episode about like how like the mindset of has shifted as different generations have gone through. Because I
Yeah.
mean, in the seats that we sit in at work, we hear about like, oh, these millennials, oh, these Gen Zs, oh, those boomers. Like, there's always like this perception of what they bring, but what's brought is
What's
something that
taught.
we've been taught.
Yeah, what's brought is what's taught. For a little rhyme there. I've said that so many times on different panels and such because I get so annoyed when people talk about different generations. I'm like, yeah, like Gen X was the lazy generation. And then it was Gen Y and then Gen Z. And, so like, is it really
Right.
is it really that any generation is lazy? I think not. But that is a whole other episode. But I do think that that's part of the trap that creates this scarcity mindset versus this abundance mindset of believing that in order to have what you want, it's going to be a struggle to get
Yeah.
there. Like, you're going to have to struggle really hard. And so why would you share what you've struggled for, particularly if other people are not struggling? And then you watch from the outside in and you don't see the struggle of
Yeah.
other people and you watch them getting what you feel like you can't have or what's unreachable. And then that becomes more and more this compounding factor of like this scarcity mindset. And so when you think about like last year, what happened from a healthcare industry standpoint and all of this animosity that's been growing, which I get, by the way, for, big healthcare and this feeling of it's us against them. Like, I think it comes from this scarcity mindset of there's not enough to go around and like they have it and I want it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that like I am happy with the way healthcare is working in the United States or that there doesn't need to be a different level of accountability. It's just how we're approaching the problem. I always have to stop and ask myself, like, am I putting myself in this us versus them because I'm feeling like there's not enough to go around, not enough power, not enough voice, not enough seats at the table, um, not enough money, not enough access? Like, is it coming from this place of scarcity?
So let's shift into like how we shift out of
Yeah.
scarcity mode, because I think
Yeah.
what you were just explaining is a really important part of it, and you've said it a few times. You got to name it to tame it. Name your scarcity story so that you can flip the script on it.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to name it to tame it. So you have to be aware of it. You have to be open to it. I think the first thing before you even name it is you have to be willing to get
Right.
uncomfortable and dive into that because it's not comfortable. It's really uncomfortable to challenge yourself in this way. And I think only you can really do this for yourself. in the name it to tame it, I think it's also really important to understand that when you are in this scarcity mindset, things feel urgent. And they may be urgent or they may not be urgent, but it gets you into this like compressed short term
Yeah.
thinking versus kind of long term thinking. So you have to give yourself some perspective. Like, is this going to matter in 6 months?
Yeah.
Um, like sometimes things do and sometimes things don't. And it activates that portion of your brain versus just the amygdala. It activates that prefrontal cortex that helps you handle like long-term reasoning.
Yeah.
So, I love the question, would the calm version of me what would the calm version of me feel about this? Now, often when I am not the calm version of me, I cannot come up with the answer to that. But and no one else better ask me that question, by the way.
Making a mental note.
And what are you doing? Suggesting I'm not calm? Only me on the quiet inside may ask that question of myself. But if I don't know the answer, maybe it's a good, or I can't come to that answer. Maybe it's a really good sign that like only my amygdala is engaged right
Yeah.
now, and I should set it down, walk away, and come back later. And
Yeah.
it's so annoying, but it always does like dissipate that like surge that's going through your body that's causing you to not be able to like think fully about something. It does dissipate and you come back around. And even though for me it's super uncomfortable to put something down and come back to it later, it's a skill that I think is really helpful, so that you can use the right portions of your brain to help
Yeah.
you make decisions. Not suggesting that one is wrong, but more than one perspective is always helpful.
Yeah, and I personally, I love this methodology because I do think there are certain times where I find myself in this like more highly emotional state and I don't like making decisions from there because then like I haven't really like thought through all of the things.
Yeah.
And so I do like buying myself a little bit of time. And I've started like this joke with people that like, oh, I'm making that a future Chris problem. Like I receive whatever you're trying to give me, but I am not in a state where I can deal with this right now. And I know that that's probably a luxury that not every, but depending on the situation, like you said, like
You can
sometimes you can.
afford it. You
Right.
just think you can't. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think like knowing those things, and then something else that you said is like getting those other perspectives. And that's something
Yeah.
that I truly value, especially whenever it's like something that I'm like new to or like I don't consider myself an expert in, or like I know there are people who like see things differently than I do, and like being able to go to them and ask them and seek to understand through the way that they are perceiving things is very helpful. And it just personally makes me feel like I'm making a better decision,
Yeah.
and a more informed decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because there are times when you need to rely on your amygdala to make decisions. Those things that like are urgent and are short.
Right.
It's just that oftentimes we get stuck in that mode, like we're triggered. and scarcity mindset like does trigger that, so that you start making all of your decisions thinking about the short term and
Yeah.
not the long term. And you can't even see that. You can't even understand what the long term would be because you're so used to thinking about certain things in the short term. And I think that's, so we started meeting with a financial planner, which thanks to you, we got connected with. And that was really hard for me because I was like, well, I'm not going to let anybody else like talk to me about money because they probably are going to steal it. Like they're probably going to find a way to get in and do me wrong here. And like that is all coming from, scarcity mindset. I'm like, my money would be better underneath my mattress, like buried in a hole in the ground somewhere. And none of that's true, guys, by the way. But I was like, okay, well, I've reached a point in life where I need to start thinking more, like clearly about this. And I like, this is not my gift. Like, I get it. I get numbers, all of that, but there are parts of this that I just don't, this isn't my gift.
Yeah.
And other people do have the gift. And so I need to lean on that. Thankfully, gets it, understands it, so I can be like, "Look, if you understand it and you guys are aligned, I will work on trusting."
That
Um,
will be my homework.
was super uncomfortable because I'm
Yeah.
totally in scarcity mindset. But
Yeah.
my financial advisor said to me, "What's the number that's enough?" And I said, like, "There's never gonna be a number that's enough. There's never gonna be a number that's enough. I don't I don't have a number that feels like enough, that I've saved enough that I'm gonna be okay, and I can start spending."
Yeah.
And he, like, I'm sure has heard that from others before, but he's like, "Okay, like, maybe you wanna think about that because you should enjoy some of what you have
Yeah.
now." And, I think this is something that, ACE has taught me over time is, like, how to find a little more of that balance in being able to enjoy some of what you have. So we certainly have gone on, and then it's also when you spend the money not feeling bad about it.
Yeah. That's the
Like,
other part of it.
I wish I wouldn't have spent that money. Like, no, like you don't have to just stick it all underneath your bed for the what if, and then like you've worked so hard for it, but did you enjoy it?
Right.
And I think that's this scarcity mindset that comes out for me. And so this abundance mindset is realizing like I generated this, I got to here. And so it's okay for me to feel like I can let my foot off the gas and I'll be able to continue doing what I have done before to continue pushing myself forward. And so when I think about like the choices that I made last year to take some time off, take a step back um, from work, like that was really scary because I had enough to do that. I had specifically saved for it,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to do that because there is never a number that is
Right.
enough, but I needed to do that for me and for my own happiness and for myself and to for my mental health, to figure out who I am, to focus on and prioritize things in my life that I didn't know how to focus on and prioritize.
Yeah.
So I needed to remove the noise. And I'm so grateful that, I put myself in positions to be able to take that opportunity. But there were a number of times where I said, "Man, if I'd have not taken a pause here, look what I could have now. Look where I could be now." And
Yeah.
then the question is, yeah, but would you even have done those things? Because, there is never enough.
Right.
So you got to start thinking like, you know what? I would bet on myself.
Well, that goes to another thing to think about whenever we're trying to shift out of that is like the idea of like celebrate it before
Yeah.
you move on to the next thing, because it is worth acknowledging the accomplishments that you have achieved. Like, and I think you being
Yeah.
able to take the time off that you did and focus on those things, like, I think that was you sitting in that success. And I remember us having many conversations where you were like, I feel like I should be doing something. I feel like I should be doing something more. And it was like, the whole reason you did this was to like take a breath.
Oh man, I sure did make myself real busy. But I did enjoy it. Like I was on my own gen time, which
Right.
I loved the most. Um being on gen time versus everybody else's time.
But it
But
took you a while to like
it
get
did.
comfortable being in that
It
space.
did.
Like I
It
remember us talking about
it
it.
took me far too long. So I feel like I did not have 10 months off. I feel like I had maybe a month off. But it's funny that you say that because when I just think about celebrating something, I don't feel like that's work to do, and yet it really is. It can be. It can be if this is not something that is ingrained in you, it can be work to let yourself celebrate things. Like not just to go through the motions or say the words, but to actually let yourself stop and celebrate without thinking like, oh, we shouldn't be celebrating. Oh, I feel guilty. All the things. Like truly let yourself sit and celebrate the wins and enjoy them because they will propel you forward. Um, there's a season for everything. There's a time for everything. We have
Yeah.
seasons for a reason. And
We're really rhyming today.
I really am. And if we don't allow ourselves to sit in that season of celebration, then what is going to propel us through those really hard times? You're going to get burnt out.
Yeah, I think this is one of those areas that we are likely more able and willing to celebrate somebody else when
Mm,
they've achieved something, and we're
mm.
like, that's a big deal, you should absolutely celebrate it. And you're like, no, 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 it's not that big of a thing. Like, and so
I'm
like,
embarrassed. I feel like I'm grandstanding.
right.
I feel all these things. Like, yeah, I am so uncomfortable celebrating, and then I show up looking awkward, and everybody reads it wrong when I do it. And yeah, like you have to learn how to celebrate. And that is not something that I was taught growing up. So
All right, so we're gonna do a crash course in
yeah,
celebration.
we should actually. That's a really good thing for us to talk about in the future. Um, so I think you also have to create the definition of enough. I talked about how this conversation I had with my financial advisor and him saying, "What's the number that's going to be enough?" And me saying, and I mean this really genuinely, there will never be a number that will feel like enough. I will always feel like I don't have enough. And it's not because I am selfish and trying to hoard, it's because it's coming from a place of fear
Yeah.
that any moment, something could come and take it all away and I could lose that stability. And so you have to really get back to like, what is it that's causing me to feel this way? And how can I define what enough looks like? And I don't know, is this something you feel like you do well? Can you define enough for yourself?
I think I have found ways through therapy that for me, whenever I enter certain parts in my brain where I feel like I'm spiraling or I'm like on the hamster wheel, whatever you want to call it, I'm able to recognize it. And so in those instances, I am able to like pull back and try to suss out like what's going on here. And like, my pulse is escalated. I can't sleep.
Yeah.
I will like insert wherever I'm at. And I start asking myself, like, what's going on? What are we thinking about? Why is it causing that? And so this is like the first time that I've kind of heard this idea of like defining it for yourself, because I'm always the type of person that like, if you've listened to our earlier episodes, I'm like, well, let's define this. Like
Yeah.
I want the actual theory of it, not just like my made up version of it.
Yeah. Well, and so what we know is that scarcity thrives on vague standards.
Right.
And so you feel like you don't have enough because you don't know what enough looks like.
Right.
And so when I go back to times in my life where I have felt like for a moment in time that I had that sense of security, how would I define that? Um, and so I think whether it's feeling like what you want to achieve and keeping your list realistic instead of, this, I'm so bad at this. Let me give you the 25 things I'm going to achieve and I'll do them all in Q1. And I remember this leader that I talk about a lot, who I reference a lot, who taught me so much about, like, I don't even think he knows this, but just like this level of self awareness. He was like, I mean, that feels like a lot, Jen. Do you have to do all of that right away? Do you need to do all of that right away? Can you just pare that down to like 3 things for the year? And I was like, just 3 things for the year? Like that feels like I'm like
Am I
basically
even doing anything?
yeah. Like how can I be proud of that?
That's true.
But like let's find some balance here. And like he wasn't questioning whether I could do something. He was
Right.
questioning like you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to be like, how is this good for you? And then if you're burnt out, it's not good for me.
Right.
And this is the thing about burnout, which scarcity leads to. We are actually all accountable for our own burnout. And I think while I feel super accountable for most things, that was one thing I really had to learn a hard lesson in, is feeling like, well, everybody else is the guilty for my burnout. No, 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 no. You're the only person that can manage your own boundaries. That's a boundary problem, by the way. And if you are just running in this place of scarcity, and so you feel like it's never enough, and you always have to accomplish more because the win is never enough. I was having a conversation with somebody who said to me, she's got all of this great credibility and, all of this stuff. And she was like, I mean, I made this one mistake and I think it's just gonna like be the end. And I was like, well, then what good is credibility anyways? Why are we stacking it up? Because if you make one mistake and no matter how much credibility you had, like it ends you. uh, why are we trading in the credibility currency then? Like that doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. And she was like, you're right. Um, but it doesn't change the way I feel.
Well, and I think that also can go to like, we're going to these definitions, like how are we defining these things? And then are we sharing that with other
Yeah.
people? Because if they're coming into your environment and you're trying to like, you're using your measuring stick on the things that they're doing, like we may not be aligned on what this looks like. I had a very strong reaction whenever you said like burnout is a personal thing, not something
I
that's
saw that in your eyes. I did see that. I
I
saw
was
your
just like,
reaction.
how dare you say that? But it's
what,
like,
what do you think about that?
well, until you said it's a boundaries thing, I was like, that's very true because, like, look, there will always be things to be done. Like, you and I have talked about that before. There will always be things that need attention, things that need to be completed. But if you just worked on, like, churning that out and you're not focusing on yourself, you're not focusing on your well-being, you're not prioritizing yourself, you're going to burn yourself out.
Well, we teach people how to treat us, right? And so if we're
Right.
teaching them that it's okay to just keep pouring on more and that we'll be accountable for our own burnout, like, I think it's if you don't explode, if for those people that just explode and it's like too much, they're almost teaching somebody else that they have to be responsible for the limit.
Yeah.
And, I think you and I have both had this experience where it's like we just want everything to be running really smoothly and everybody's fine and we're more concerned about how the other people are feeling about it while on the inside we're imploding. And that's not healthy either. Like I don't think
Right.
either of those are healthy. And so but it was a hard lesson for me to learn years ago. I mean, it was like 15 years ago. I was like in this place where I just was so burnt out. And I had this conversation with my boss at the time. And I was like, I mean, I'm literally hiding underneath my desk, trying to pull myself together because I literally cannot do any more. And yet you ask more of me. And she said, how would I have known that? Because you never shared that with me.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're going to put that back on me? Like, shouldn't you just know?
How dare you?
And I had to really sit with that and go,
Yeah.
oh, like I thought that I was failing if I told you. I mean, I thought you wouldn't ask me if it didn't need to be done. And I thought I was failing if I couldn't do literally everything, catch everything you threw my way. I thought that was a
Yeah.
failure, as opposed to me being jealous of the people that have a short plate of things to do and they're just living the good life. And it was like, okay, well, but like, why? Because they set that boundary and said, here's what I can do. And like, work isn't going to be 24 hours of my day. And I'm going to set some boundaries here and this is what I can do. And then I'm going to deliver on it. And I'm still not super good at that, but that's something that I have really had to take accountability for myself is I'm accountable for my own burnout. And I would say the same thing to my team members. If they're like telling me, yeah, I can take it. Yeah, I can do it. And then on the inside, they're imploding, but they never said anything. Like, I'm not going to own that. I'm not trying to burn anybody out.
Right.
So we have to, I will own making sure we can have a conversation about it. But if I ask you how you're doing and you tell me fine and you're imploding on the inside,
Very
like that's
true.
on you, right?
Very true.
Um,
But I just think this conversation has like really like it has many roots in many of the other things we've
It does.
discussed,
It
like
does.
boundaries, speaking your truth, advocating for yourself, like all of those things are really important. And like I guess like as we're talking about understanding where, why, and how we end up with these definitions and our reactions to this idea of scarcity and abundance, like it shows up and has a ripple effect in so many other places in our lives.
Yeah. Well, what we know is that clarity reduces scarcity and creates space for abundance. And so, in order to get clarity, you have to be willing to be introspective.
Yeah.
You got to put some names on it. You got to spend some time getting uncomfortable. Just like you said, like, oh my gosh, you said this about burnout and it was uncomfortable for a minute. And I appreciate you being real about that because it is uncomfortable. It's like super uncomfortable, but also it's uncomfortable to stay living in this scarcity mindset and show up in a way where I feel like I'm like just trying to get mine because that's not really core to my values.
Yeah.
And then it's exhausting. And that's uncomfortable. It's exhausting to live in a scarcity place.
Yeah.
So I'd much rather lean into the abundant side of things and figure out like how to spend more of my time in life in that place.
Okay, so last question for you, because I know
Yeah.
you've been on this journey a little bit longer than I have.
Yeah.
Anything that you do that you feel helps like ground you or keep your mind in the right space as you're moving through things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I like to play 20 questions with myself, or everybody else too. I'm very curious by nature. Um, and so I think for me, it's s- speaking my thoughts and then listening to them, whether it's speaking them just to myself, speaking them into a journal, speaking them to like you or somebody else. You don't have to do this like in a public forum, but like speaking my thoughts in a way that I can hear them and then listening
Yeah.
to how I'm thinking creates that sense of awareness for me. And then centering myself on what is it that I really want. Because I think it's easy to get stuck in like in the middle of the forest staring at just the trees in front of me. And then I don't think about how like everything else surrounding me
Yeah.
is playing in, right? And sometimes I have to go around a tree to get to the path to get out of the forest. And
Yeah.
when you're just face to face with the tree, it doesn't really seem like that's the right solution. And so for me, that comes back to being willing to listen to what the thoughts that I am running through are really saying. And I think also like when you have that safe space to talk about it with somebody else, they can challenge you in really safe ways. Now, like I said, don't be coming asking me when I'm all uncalm. Don't tell me when I'm not calm to calm down.
We would like to talk to Calm Jen, please.
Let me offer you a boundary. It's not going to go well for you. It's not going to go well for me. Neither of us are going to feel good about it. I don't think it's a positive idea. So I think you do have to draw your boundaries of like what you are willing to, like when to engage. And you know what? I'm okay with the fact that you shouldn't tell me to calm down when I'm not calm. You should instead just put your hand on the center of my back and rub it.
That's
And be
only for people
gracious.
you know. You don't
Yeah.
want strangers coming up and touching you.
Oh yeah, don't touch me if I don't know you. That's a no.
Uh, well, Jen, thank you so much for like one sharing this idea of scarcity mindset with me, but then also willing to like have the conversation. We've been talking about it for a while, and it just felt like this was the right time. So
Yeah,
I
thanks for diving
appreciate
in
it.
with me. This was really helpful. I appreciate that you were willing to like go on this journey with me and help me understand it better. I think it's something that I still work on, and it's something that is important for my general happiness. So I really appreciate you being open and bringing some of this to the table so we could talk about it.
Absolutely. Like most things, we are practicing it ourselves. We have not perfected it.
Oh, not at all. So if you like have thoughts about this, if you have great tips, I mentioned at the beginning that we like to crowdsource our self-development. So please share it with us, drop it in the comments, send us an email at connect@chrisandjenitm.com. You can text us at 940-278-8129.
Also, don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms. We, like Jen
Yeah.
said earlier in the episode, we are looking to build a community, and that is honestly, we want people who want to go along the journey with us. And so, like, comment, subscribe, share, do all of the things. We appreciate you spending your time with us. We know that time is a gift, and you spent it with us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate that. And until next time, be kind to yourself, to one another, and have a great week.
Bye, everyone.